O land of beauty, our country, where peace abounds, thy children stand free. On the strength of will and love, with God in all our struggles, St. Kitts and Nevis be a nation bound together with a common destiny. As a stalwarts we stand for justice and liberty, with wisdom and truth we will serve and honor thee. No sword nor spear can conquer, for God will sure defend. His blessing shall forever to posterity extend.
Let us please remain standing, heads bowed, for prayer. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. This morning let us adore the might and majesty of God, which we see reflected in the mystery and the wonder of his creation. You, O God, are everywhere to be found. Your spirit is active in all the world. We see you in the dynamic forces of continuing creation through us, in research, in laboratories, and in lecture rooms. You are not a selfish God. You do not keep the good things of your creation to yourself. And as you share your created gifts with us, O God, help us to share them with others, using hand and eye, mind and skill, friendship and love for the good of others. We are your hands, feet, eyes, and mouths in the world. Continue to bless us with your gifts in order to promote positive economic growth and social and human development. Thank you for the gift of human imagination. Bless us in our seeking or inquiring in our knowledge, and for the patience and persistence to begin again when things go wrong. Give us an awareness of your presence and a sensitivity to respond to your promptings, to measure our actions to your guidance, and above all, give us eyes unclouded by prejudice, so that all persons may benefit from our zeal and determination for a better life for them. Be present with us today, O Heavenly Father, to guide and to inspire and to show the way forward, that this national consultation on the economy may go in the way that it should go. In Jesus' name we pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
Thank you. Be seated. I recognize the presence of the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel L. Douglas, Minister of Finance, Sustainable Development. I also recognize our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Housing, Public Works, Energy and Public Utilities, the Honorable Dr. Earl Asim Martin. I also recognize other members of the executive arm of government, including the Honorable Marcella Liebert, Minister of Health, Social Services, Community Development, Culture and Gender Affairs. I also recognize the Honorable Attorney General, the Honorable Jason Hamilton, and the Honorable Senator Nigel Carty, Minister of Education, Information, Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Cooperatives. I also recognize Mr. Joseph Edmead, Cabinet Secretary, Reverend Joyce Rohan, our minister today of the Gospel. I also recognize Sir K. Dwight Venner, the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Mr. Justine Ram, Director of Economics Department, also Mr. Wayne Mitchell of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Damian Hobson, President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. I recognize other business leaders in our present and state officials and members of the diplomatic corps. I also recognize Mr. Terence Craig, Director of the Organization of American States, Mrs. Sylvia Gums, Deputy Financial Secretary, and other members of staff of the Ministry of Finance. I also recognize Mr. Colin Dorr, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance in the Nevis Island Administration, and other permanent secretaries, heads of departments, representatives of statutory corporations and public companies, and representatives of civil society. I must also interject here at this point and recognize the Minister of Labour, Justice and Legal Affairs and Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honourable Patrice Nisbet, and as well Dr. Kelvin Daly, President of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, students of the college, the media, representatives of other organizations, and all specially invited ladies and gentlemen. We are here today to innovate through synergisms and also through dialogue in the 17th edition of the consultation of the budget in preparation for the budget of 2015. We have a short opening ceremony, and so we will get into it. I will now call upon our Financial Secretary, Mrs. Hilary Hazel, to bring welcome remarks. Let us put our hands together for Ms. Hazel.
Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas, permit me, having had Mr. Vaughan so ably welcome everyone at this time, to adopt the protocols. I don't know. Can I have some help with the mic, please? Okay. Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Denzel Douglas, permit me to adopt the protocol. Very good. That's much better. To adopt the protocol that has been so ably established by Mr. Vaughan, coming so closely after his presentation. Permit me to say good morning to all and to welcome you to the 17th edition of the annual national consultation of the government of St. Kitts-Nevis on the economy in preparation for the budget. The theme chosen for this year is Keeping the Edge, Energizing Growth and Human Capital Development. This year marks the 10th year that we have held this forum here in the Marriott Hotel. Therefore, we take time out to extend thanks to the hard-working staff of the Marriott Hotel for their years of service and facilitation of these consultations, which provide a very good avenue, I dare say, for busy people to talk to each other and to update each other on information and the sharing of ideas with each other. The budget is the most important instrument which authorizes the government and the Ministry of Finance in particular to both collect revenue and undertake expenditure, whether on the recurrent or on the capital side. During the course of 2014, the government has been busy implementing a wide variety of programs and projects, some of which were conceived and designed with input from you, our social and economic partners. We take time out every year to host these consultations because they have become an important part of the official budget calendar of the Ministry of Finance. More importantly, over the years, these consultations have helped to contribute to building partnerships, consensus, and understanding among the different stakeholder groups operating within our economy. Even when the challenges confronting the Federation, even with all the challenges that confront the Federation, the Ministry of Finance maintains the hope that the 2015 budget can be designed with your help to sustain government's role in stimulating and facilitating growth and social progress. This, we believe, can be done in meaningful partnership with the private sector and civil society. The government will continue to deepen its emphasis on fiscal and debt sustainability, improving education and skills training, and investing in critical infrastructure. It will also continue to support innovation and entrepreneurship, enhance the regulatory and general business environment, strengthen tax administration and public financial systems in general. We also intend to continue the work to improve performance in the public sector. Now that we have completed the standby arrangement with the International Monetary Fund, the Ministry of Finance will continue to provide the leadership necessary to rise to the challenge of sustaining the gains of the years of stabilization and adjustment. At the same time, we will do our best to play our part in promoting more broad-based growth. We hope that the presentations today will assist us to think through the challenges and inspire our collective creative solutions, and most importantly, inspire us to action when we have returned to the various roles we play in our community. We want to hear from all our partners. I stress all. All our partners present here today, we encourage you to participate to the fullest extent. I bid you welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Financial Secretary Hazel. I want to give a brief synopsis of Financial Secretary's welcome remarks of speaking of the implementation of ideas presented at the consultation over the years. And she said these have helped to build understanding and meaningful partnership between the government and the private sector. And her aims and the aims of the program today, sustaining years of gain, thinking through the challenges, and inspiring us all to action. Before I move on with the program, I also want to recognize the presence of Mr. Elvis Newton, the head of the Civil Service. Let us put our hands together for him. Following through with the program, I want to call to the podium the next speaker, who is the president of the St. Kitts-Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce. He represents private sector in these consultations on the economy, and his presence here today indicates a deep desire of his behalf and on behalf of the private sector to work in partnership with the government and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I call to the podium Mr. Damian Hobson, CEO of Hobson's Enterprises and President of the St. Kitts and Nevis Chamber of Industry and Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Please allow me to adopt the protocol previously established. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We have gathered here today to exchange ideas and explore avenues that could lead to meaningful enterprise and mutual benefit. The task to which we have consented through our presence at this consultation is to find solutions to some of the problems that confront us as a nation. Some of the world's greatest intellectuals hold fast to the view that critical thinking that is results-oriented is not possible without the formulation and sharing of a diversion of views that are present in the search for the most workable remedies. In other words, disagreements do not necessarily mean we are not on the same team. Instead, it tells us that we are exercising our brain power to build pillars of development through the testing of theories, especially with the challenges that confront us in the domestic and global markets. The theme for this year's consultation is noted with much interest, and I quote, "Keeping the edge, energizing growth and human capital development," end of quote. We are hopeful that the expectations of today's dialogue will deliver the promise to arrive at a consensus to strategies to promote sustained economic growth and social development in St. Kitts and Nevis. We accept that such transformation can only be possible if there is a vibrant, highly productive and competitive private sector matched by an enabling corporate environment facilitated by a protocol of policies and programs mastered by our governments. Of equal importance, though, is our belief that a push forward in pursuit of any objective would be easy unless it is vested with the adequate and appropriate human capital to lead us in a modern world driven by technology and highly skilled and trained executives. The theme suggests that we already possess the edge and that it is our duty to preserve it. But it also begs the obvious question, what is our edge? I am certain that the revelation will be made in presentations to come. The pathway to sustainable economic growth and social development, we believe, must consider the following. 1. The need for a paradigm shift in our approach to education and the nourishing of our greatest asset, our people, or our human capital. 2. The enhancement of private-public partnerships. Government and business must continue to shoulder the responsibilities to advance our national ambitions. While talk is necessary, so too is the implementation of acceptable recommendations in a timely fashion. We remain concerned that too many great ideas and recommendations coming out of this exercise have gone unheeded in the past. This too is an impediment to the growth we seek. 3, a more tactical approach to economic management of key vehicles of growth, such as tourism and construction, and new possibilities like agriculture are desired. 4, a vigorous infrastructural program that strengthens the platform for commerce and social undertakings with a modern road network, reliable and affordable utility supplies, medical facilities, and educational institutions that are constantly upgraded and maintained. 5, the crafting of a more mature and aggressive policy framework that breathes new life into local enterprise, with fiscal inducements that are comparable to those extended to investment projects originating offshore. 6, central to the creation of the right conditions for development in any country must be a balance between good governance, political stability, crime fighting, a free and fair press, an independent judiciary, an enlightened and educated populace, and a fearless civil society. This nation that we are aiming to build was founded in 1983 on the principles of democracy and the fair distribution and administration of justice. We decided then to build St. Kitts-Nevis as a Christian society following a free market economy. The premise often made is that for a free market economy system like ours to flourish and to achieve sustainable growth and social development, there must be a bedrock of laws, a functioning constitution, a pathway to seek redress, and most importantly, honorable men and women with good intentions to do the national interests. Free market enterprise needs democracy for it to flourish. Therefore, I posit the view that the current political culture in St. Kitts-Nevis is a major obstacle to economic growth that we seek. The long-term challenges of St. Kitts-Nevis cannot be solved over the next election cycle because they require more careful study and collaboration across all dividing lines. But what is solvable now is the almost 2-year-old motion of no confidence from the 11th December 2012 and the other two filed in 2013 and 2014. The importance and urgency of the motion are all accepted by the head of government who 2 years ago promised action on this front. As we said in our recent press release, a respect by government for democratic principles is an essential element to the economic development of a small developing country such as ours. The democracy and consequently the economic development of St. Kitts-Nevis will be tenuous at best, so long as the major legislative organ of the state, namely the National Assembly, continues to be operated in an undemocratic manner with complete disregard for the majority of elected representatives of that body. We remain with that conviction that the Speaker's failure to permit the National Assembly to debate and vote on the motion of confidence is a serious departure from the expected standards of democratic governance in our constitutional democracy. The failure to hear the motion is a serious matter because it speaks to the core values of democracy, and we respectfully submit it is a serious blot on our democracy and a major deterrent to the advancement of our nation. The Chamber calls again on the Speaker to table the motion. We call on the Prime Minister to ensure that the motion is tabled in keeping with the principles which he recognized in his address to the Chamber in December 2012. He said then that the motion requires priority attention in the legislature. For the past 7 years, we have been in a constant cycle of political turmoil, mostly related to the governance of the country and the management of elections in particular. This is not good for development. While a lot of good is happening throughout our nation in public and private life, a lot of bad needs correcting. As the stalemate continues, the world keeps watching to see what would be the outcome. As an emerging nation, looking ahead to the future, we need to divorce our youths from the political tribalism that pervades our land to avoid a vicious cycle involving generations to come. Few would doubt that an educated and more enlightened population provides a foundation for a dynamic model for the fostering of all spheres of activity. Our investment in education is critical, and though national security, health, and other portfolios are imperative, what we do today within education will determine who we become as a society and what we become as an economic force. Successive governments have introduced meaningful measures that have benefited thousands of our nation's youths, and the new ones, funded by the SIDF, are also worthy of note and praise. We are told that since the introduction of REACH, the total enrollment at the CFPC has increased by 35%. This is commendable and should be applauded. However, solutions to bridge the widening gap between our brightest minds and those who are more varied in their ability profiles still require even more effort. There is no secret that approximately 50% of our students entering high school fail to make it to the fifth form level to write CXC exams. Our problem is not access to secondary education. That was resolved decades ago. Our challenge is to keep them in school and to help them graduate with the requisite qualifications. What is needed is greater policy coherence that is more akin to the requirements of today's world. The current brain drain is even worse when we factor that we keep losing our best students every year to more developed nations who seem more amenable to compensating them for their newly acquired skills and qualifications after university and college. Generally, there are more students from the non-UE territories like Kitts-Nevis who are studying in US institutions rather than at the University of the West Indies. Figures from 2001, which have not significantly changed today, saw 271 Kittians and Nevian students in the US compared to 104 at UE. Most of our students today are electing to stay in the US because when they are told to come back home, the question they ask, returned to do what? That is why, Mr. Chairman, the Chamber continues to call for the removal of restrictions and write-offs for employees earning more than $75,000 annually. If we are to remain competitive in attracting the best talent while offering income packages and benefits to a growing pool of trained and qualified Kittians and Nevians professionals, a more urgent consideration is needed in this regard. In addition, we recommend that this ceiling be raised to a minimum of EC $100,000 annually. We simply cannot continue to lose our more gifted students to the US because that means we are subsidizing their development. Additionally, we believe that part of the strategy to provide sustainable growth is embedded in the principle that lower taxes lead to increased consumer spending, resulting in greater revenue generation for all stakeholders. There was no more glaring manifestation of this than in 2013 during the VAT days. A reduction in the value-added tax delivered great levels of revenue to government in 48 hours compared to weeks or months in some categories. This year, buoyed by the obvious success of last year, we recommend that this initiative be repeated, except that we are proposing 3 days instead of 2, with good reason. We are prepared to jointly examine the rationale at your convenience, but I should suggest now that this formula is a win-win for all 3 stakeholder groups: government, consumers, and businesses that qualify. But the greatest benefit is that it keeps the spending here at home rather than providing injection of trade and commerce overseas. This also helps in the retention of jobs. There is a saying, and I quote, "When the private sector does well, there's increased revenue for the public sector. And of course, when the private sector is hurting, so too will the revenue streams of government," end of quote. A healthy private sector also results in stronger communities and greater opportunities for the personal growth and movement of people to higher levels of social prosperity. But to begin with, the private sector must have an environment in which to blossom. Again, we call on the reduction of VAT on financial services to reduce the costs of borrowing and to incentivize banks to drop lending rates. One final note on VAT is our call for the increase in the number of food and medical items that should be added to the baskets of goods enjoying either zero-rated or exempt status. This helps us to cater more to the needs of the poor and those suffering from chronic diseases. In this new environment of more progressive policy making, we also see a need for new efforts on old suggested action plans, like lowering the corporate rate, removal of restrictions on capital allowances, implementation of accelerated depreciation, removal of restrictions on losses carried forward, removal of restrictions in bad debt, and the passage of legislation to address restrictions on donations. There's a famous quote from the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Mr. Winston Churchill, which says, and I quote, "Some people regard private enterprise as a predatory tiger to be shot. Others look on at it as a cow they can milk. Not enough people see it as a healthy horse pulling a sturdy wagon," end of quote. We know that there have been challenges faced by our national economy in recent years. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, in its report in June this year, stated, and I quote, "Since 1980, when the highest economic growth rates were averaging 6% were recorded, there has been a secular decline in growth in the ECCU. Real domestic product growth is provisionally estimated at 0.7% in 2013 and 1.9% in 2014. Returning to the growth levels of the 80s will be critical if the current issues of sustained growth, job creation, substantially increased per capita incomes are to be addressed," end of quote. We agree with that analysis and the attendant recommendations. However, as it pertains to Kitts-Nevis, both the government and the IMF have been projecting increased growth levels coming out of the recent structural adjustment program that was precipitated by the spiraling national debt in the neighborhood of almost $3 billion. It was reported that after a 4-year contraction, a stronger than expected recovery of 4% was expected for 2013. According to the IMF, this reflects rapid expansion in construction related to the citizenship by investment inflows and substantial increase in public sector investment, as well as support from the People Empowerment Program. Any edge that we have attained is said to be attributed to the CBI and foreign direct investment that has flowed from it. The construction sector, which oftentimes is a leader in economic activity, has benefited tremendously. But while we offer praise for the Citizenship by Investment Program, warning signs have also been mounted for the SIDF option. The IMF says, and I quote, "Developing a medium-term framework to effectively manage CBI inflows will be key to reducing vulnerability to exogenous shocks and securing fiscal and external sustainability," end of quote. We agree. The Chamber is at one with the IMF on the way forward for the SIDF and CBI. Greater accountability and transparency are recommended. The last published accounts of the SIDF were in 2011. A timelier sharing of these accounts could lead to more confidence and support for the program. We do recognize that disbursements have been placed in some good programs, but there are concerns about the manner in which the funds are being spent generally, with huge sums going into consumables. There is a view that the SIDF resources ought to serve as a rainy day fund and for productive sector support geared towards long-term development. We believe that a differently structured SIDF should have greater requirements for transparency, reporting to Parliament and the Governor-General. In this new thrust, we advocate for the establishment of what would become a sovereign fund, under the management of an independent council, not directed by any individual political directorate. Both governments, at the federal and local levels, should receive annual contributions as grants for priority areas as defined by the Nevis Island Administration and the federal government in Bastille. This requires a paradigm shift in our approach to the stewardship of SIDF. Our thoughts are not dissimilar to the IMF, which already suggested to the federal government that there should be a moderation of amounts used from CBI for budgetary purposes, with the rest being saved. There is no doubt that the Citizenship by Investment Program introduced since 1984 has been good to the country. But at the same time, we equally believe that the benefits have to be shared equitably amongst those nationals living in Nevis and those in St. Kitts. In terms of economic performance, a good Nevis and a bad St. Kitts will only amount to a weaker federation, and by extension, a successful St. Kitts with a struggling Nevis produces a failing St. Kitts and Nevis. It means, therefore, that as citizens of the Twin Island Federation, we should all share the benefits of our assets while we work in the national interest. While we call for greater transparency in terms of the SIDF, we also urge the release of accounts for other public corporations like the Tourism Authority and the NHC. The commitment made on Independence Day by the government to double the number of hotel rooms in the country is welcomed. This could lead to much needed boost to our local land-based tourism sector that continues to struggle to find its way in the mix of economic contributors. Added rooms will obviously spur activity in the construction sector, helping to generate more jobs for our skilled men and women. We also look forward to achieving the achievement of registering 1 million visitors come next cruise ship season. We know that our allied businesses that benefit are eager for the possibilities. The challenge still to be confronted, though, is related to the low numbers of stay-over visitors. After 4 decades of a serious push in tourism, we are lagging too far behind other OECS countries in terms of visitor arrivals, reaching just under 140,000 last year. Our hotel sector is still experiencing modest annual occupancy levels, and some attribute this to another problem of high airfares to Kitts-Nevis. This is an issue that begs for constant monitoring and advocacy with the airlines, blended by an enhanced marketing program in key source markets, including the Caribbean. The level of trust, confidence, and cooperation between captains of enterprise and political leaders and technocrats is essential in any new engagement. Today's world is getting smaller, not geographically, of course, but in human relations of all types. Technology and travel have made this possible, and the smaller we become, the more economically dependent we are, despite claims of political sovereignty. With the amalgamation of states through trade, there is one glaring lesson to be embraced. Our best hope of survival and growth as a small developing country is through greater partnership and cooperation, especially between the public and private sectors. If we are to succeed, it is imperative that we do things better, not engage in unproductive activity that harms us, but pursue those that make us more competitive. The Chamber is sold on the idea that if public-private partnership can be made to work, it will be extremely beneficial to the national productivity. Examples of working together have been demonstrated through the Joint Committee working on the Partial Scope Agreement, PSA, which we still need to be finalized with Brazil. As we prepare for the Manufacturers Awareness Week, we urge our Prime Minister to work towards finalizing this agreement. With this agreement, we are of the firm view that it will bring substantial benefits to the sector here, and we urge you, Mr. Prime Minister, to give this matter urgent attention before you become consumed, shortly, I am told, in other political endeavors. Let me also thank you and your Cabinet for approving the Manufacturing Strategic Plan. Already our members are showing signs of optimism for the outcome. One final recommendation is for the establishment of a small working committee from both public and private sector to meet between the intervening months of hosting this annual event, so that recommendations could be put under closer examination. After 31 years of independence, our nation must now move on to new chapters of success, facilitated through closer cooperation between the public and private sector, and with all of its citizens having equal opportunity for advancement. Someone once said, and I quote, "A nation is not defined by its borders or the boundaries of its landmass. Rather, a nation is defined by diverse people who have unified by a cause and a value system, and who are committed to a vision of the type of society they wish to live in and give future generations to come," end of quote. What we need now in Kitts-Nevis is a nation of great people who live to positively impact others and build enduring legacies that produce sustained development and growth for our people. God bless this great nation of ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to draw our attention to just a few things said by the President of the Chamber, who has asked us to find solutions to those problems that confront us as a nation. He has asked us to pursue workable remedies, and he has outlined 6 areas as the pathway to growth and development. And he said there were a paradigm shift, enhanced public and private partnership, tactical approach to management, vigorous infrastructural programs, crafting policy framework that breathes new life, and a balance between crime fighting, democracy, and civil society involvement. And by doing those things, he said, we will pursue those things that make us a better country, a successful St. Kitts, and a good Nevis. Thank you very much, Mr. President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Let us put our hands together. Moving right along, I invite the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, who has had a breadth of experience as a former financial secretary in the government of St. Lucia and as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, to approach us and to address us briefly. So Kedite Venner, he will address us and then he will have to leave for another engagement. So please excuse him if you see him leaving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Honorable Prime Minister, members of the head table, may I adopt a protocol so that we can proceed. I always enjoy these sessions because there's such a wide variety of people and opinions that out of that there must be something positive which arrives at the end of the day. And the fact that it's been going on for so many years means that there has been value and virtue in this exercise. The performance of the St. Kitts and Nevis economy since 2013 has been very encouraging and has been the bright spot in the ECCU as we continue to be affected by the global crisis. This performance has been due to an effective implementation of a robust adjustment program conceived by the government within the guidelines of the 8-point Stabilization and Growth Program and assisted by the IMF with financing and monitoring. This performance by St. Kitts and Nevis is indicative of what is possible if the conduct of our economic policies is carried out within the conceptual framework of a broad macroeconomic framework which addresses not only adjustment, but also a growth stimulus and social safety nets which address those who are least capable of defending themselves in difficult circumstances and preparing them, where possible, for gainful employment in the economy. The first 5 points of the 8-point program can, in the case of St. Kitts and Nevis, be said to have been successfully executed, namely financial programming, fiscal reform, debt management, public sector investment programming, and the social safety nets. The other element which has made the recovery possible has been the Citizens by Investment program, which has brought much in needed foreign exchange from the government, for the government, which could then embark on an effective stimulus program and finance the social safety nets. This program is now being emulated by other members of the currency union, and we hope that it will bring them similar benefits. Economic growth in the Federation turned positive in 2013 after a contraction which started in 2009, and is projected to average about 3% and possibly over this up to 2017 in the first instance. The challenge facing the country now will be the sustainability of this performance in the current environment of an increasing competitive international economy in which no quota is given and none is asked for. This evolving environment is evidenced by the following: the removal of concessional trade arrangements which have affected and caused the demise of the 2 major agricultural export commodities in the ECCU, sugar and bananas. The difficulties they have had in trying to create viable international financial sectors. The experience of Antigua and Barbuda with the online gambling industry, in which they won their case at the WTO but could not get the judgment against the United States implemented. The current challenges to the Citizens by Investment program, which is coming from several quarters, even from countries which had these programs for years. There's also the issue of the need to urgently improve our productivity and international competitiveness in the areas that we intend to make a living from. This crisis and its aftermath gives us the opportunity to chart a new course which will ensure an increased standard of living and quality of life for our citizens if we chart a strategic and focused path to our goals. The fundamental issue will be achieving sustainable growth over an extended period of time to achieve the following: a doubling of per capita incomes by the year 2030, the reduction of poverty to below 4%, substantial reduction and possible eradication of poverty, improvement in human development indices by the UN, attaining and surpassing the Millennium Development Goals, and a diversified and competitive economy. This will require a growth rate of 3% consequent upon a phase of adjustment, which the Federation has already achieved, moving to 5 to 7% from about 2017 onwards. To be realistic about achieving these goals, we must be realistic about our circumstances and the external environment. For instance, there are factors outside of our control which we must seek to treat with through our resilience and flexibility. However, the factors that are within our purview, we must ensure that we do them with excellence and to the best of our abilities. In the context of the factors which we must contend with in our quest for development, there are three which are of great importance. They come under the headings of fundamental structural issues, institutional issues, and the binding resource constraints. Fundamental structural issues would include small size, openness, vulnerability, seasonality, and the cyclical impact of the business cycles of our main trading partners. Institutional issues would cover constitutional and political regimes, socioeconomic environment, the policy framework and architecture, and the administrative and technical capacity to execute things. Resource constraints would involve an inventory of our actual and potential human and physical resources, the supply factors which may be placed along the demand for goods and services. This would give us an idea of whether we could satisfy our wants from our resources. This is particularly a critical assessment for small states such as ours, situated as we are close to the most developed mass consumption society in the world. This also poses challenges for our competitive multi-party political systems. It is sometimes difficult to manage the expectations of our fairly modern polities and societies, which at the same time have not yet reached an advanced stage of economic development. The instruments and agents which we must have to attain our objective are the government, or the state as we would call it, the private sector, and the financial sector. In societies such as ours, the state has a very important role to play in setting the rules of the game, providing law and order, regulating the economy and the financial system, and giving incentives to encourage productive activities. The state, very importantly, provides critical physical and social infrastructure, which is the platform on which the private sector must perform to drive the economy forward. The private sector and the ECCU has a very important task of changing the structure and orientation to compete in the international environment if we are to achieve sustainable rates of growth. I just want to pause here to say that in our analysis of the private sector in the ECCU, we find that there's somewhat of an imbalance, so that you have a large informal sector and you have a formal sector which concentrates on wholesale, retail, real estate, and construction. There are some other productive activities, but in the main, that is what we have. In order to change that imbalance, that has to be recast so that we can have a private sector which is very competitive in the external environment, because that is where we earn our foreign exchange, which then follows through into the economy to propel such things as construction, real estate, what have you. I want to make this fundamental point because many times it seems that construction is pulled out as a leading sector. Right? It depends on the amount of foreign exchange, like in the CBI, which allows you then to do the things that follow. Because we don't produce any of the things, for example, in construction, which is used to go into that thing. We have to pay for those things with foreign exchange. And so we have to understand these connections in the economy before we get a little off track. The financial sector in the ECCU also has to be restructured to be an effective instrument for the mobilization of savings and their allocation to production instead of the overwhelming portion going to consumption activities. And that's another imbalance which mirrors the one I just mentioned. Because if the private sector is oriented that way, then the financial sector will also be oriented that way. But what we want is a financial sector which can provide funding at the medium and long-term end of the market so that export activities can be put forward, where then we can reach into the rest of the economy with the retail and other things that go with that. So there are these two imbalances in the economy which we have to treat with if we are to get sustainable growth over time. The Prime Minister's New Year's address to the nation capture the essence of the fundamentals necessary to propel us forward, both in St. Kitts and Nevis and the currency union as a collective association of states, united in an economic union. He highlighted the domestic actions which were taken and which still have to be taken to address the fundamental problems. However, he clearly outlined the external environment of globalization in which we exist and will have to cope with, as this process is clearly not reversible. He also struck a critical note with respect to the OECS Economic Union, namely the need to reduce the cost of government and to increase its efficiency and effectiveness through cost collaboration. The cost of providing public goods and services is extraordinarily high for very small states and constrains our ability to compete both regionally and internationally. And the Master of Ceremonies introduced me and said I worked in another area, and there I learned to count those costs. And I said they are disproportionately high for small states. The unit cost of governments, which have to provide so many things in our society, is what will tend us towards fiscal deficits as well as debt. In conclusion, the critical factor in this whole process is going to be the quality of human resources we can put to the task. There are 7 factors which are important. 3 involve physical matters, namely the environment, energy, and transportation. And these are absolutely critical. We are now moving to green economies, and I think the OECS countries are very much in the vanguard there, because in small islands, we can get overwhelmed, not only by climate change, but emissions which cannot be absorbed in such a small land space. Energy, the energy costs that we have, again, are extremely high. We're paying something like over 40 cents a kilowatt for electricity. We have competitors like Trinidad and Tobago with 7 cents, United States at 4 and 5 cents. That does not compute in the era of competitiveness. And therefore, a very good trend is the search for alternatives and really to make the use of the present facilities more efficient. Transportation is absolutely critical. The ability to get from island to island, the ability to get to the international system is extremely important if we are going to be competitive. The next 3 involves the quality of human resources, so that we talk about education skills training, we talk about research and development, and we talk about the use of ICT. In contrast to the first 3, these deal with the brain and knowledge. And that is where, given our small size, we can get economies of scale, but also increasing returns to scale, because knowledge has no boundaries. And therefore, we need to move in that particular direction. What is very interesting, I just say this as an aside, recently in comparing our OECS countries with Barbados and the countries of Singapore and Taiwan, what is very obvious, I mean, if you take Barbados, for example, Barbados is probably the most mature of our economies. Very high per capita incomes, very good infrastructure, but still dependent on tourism and financial services. and therefore they have to react to the rest of the world. They're very much influenced by that. And in Barbados recently, we have seen quite a decline in economic activities because, like us, even though they advance, and they still have to cope with that external element. In Singapore and Taiwan, where is a great deal of science and technology in use, you can see that those economies are more resilient and can react to the external environment because they're producing goods and services, high-tech services, which the international community needs. And that is how we remain on the cutting edge. So I'm making a plea here for a greater attention to education skills training as well as research and development. Research and development is so critical to advancement, it is just not funny. And of course, ICT, which fits in with all of those things. But the critical thing there is the application of these knowledge skills to the resolution of the development problem. And here, I want to tell you my experience with a project that the Taiwanese government is doing, as you know, in this country. And it is the epitome of how you address the development problem. It addresses agriculture with a high science content. It addresses tourism. It addresses science and technology to the solar arrangements. There is a part where they've shown us where building material sourced nearby has been used. It's stronger compound than what we have. And the most delightful of those innovations is the fact that they've been able to keep the monkeys at bay by using an electrical current. Now, that may seem frivolous, but the loss to agriculture by the predations of monkeys is very significant. And so why I put that forward is the whole issue of the resolution of development problems by the application of science and technology, as well as probing, right? Probing for solutions that are within our scientific capability, or that we can source this capability to apply to these particular problems. We have to narrow the odds and increase the chances of our survival in this very challenging environment. It is only by careful planning, steadfastness of purpose, and collective action that this will be achieved. We have a great opportunity in these islands because we do have a certain approach to things which, if improved over time, will get us to achieve our goals. But it does really require collective action and serious thought. I emphasize that, serious thought on how we go about resolving these things. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor Fenner. I want to look at your thoughts on economic growth that you said has turned positive in 2013, yet we have a challenge to sustain this growth. And Sir Venner, you said that we must be realistic about the environment in which we operate. And you said that there are 3 areas we must pay close attention to if we are to surmount these obstacles. These were fundamental issues, institutional issues, and resource constraints. Thank you very much, Mr. Governor. Let us put our hands together for Sir K. Dwight Venner. Our next presenter was, before public life, a legal practitioner in a private practice and also a teacher. And I believe that gives her an understanding of social advancement and the need for social integrations between the private and public sectors as a precursor for economic growth and as a signal of economic development. Today, she is the Minister of Health, Social Services, Community Development, Culture, and Gender Affairs. I ask you to put your hands together and welcome the Honorable Master Eliza to address us.
A very pleasant good morning to everyone. Permit me to adopt the protocol already established in the interest of time and to get our Prime Minister's permission so to do. Thank you. I think Mr. Vaughan forgot to tell you that I was also a professional netballer. You remember that? The phrase, keeping the edge, acknowledges that we in St. Kitts-Nevis are a step ahead of our counterparts in the sub-region and in the region as a whole in several areas. So where are we? First, in foreign direct investment in the Caribbean, highest per capita income in the Caribbean, first in manufactured exports in the OECS, including Barbados, first country in the OECS to produce a solar energy factory, and we are exporting to other countries. First in the Caribbean to introduce the baler system in solid waste management as the first step towards waste to energy. Highest growth in the Caribbean in 2013, 3.8%. In fact, higher than the USA at 1.9% and the European Union, which showed negative growth. Business Insider article about 3 months ago ranked St. Kitts-Nevis as 14th among the top 50 worldwide destinations to watch based on data from the World Travel and Tourism Council. Only 2 Caribbean countries were on that list, and we were one of them. Our destination is also ranked 4th on a list of the best islands in the world, 2nd on a list of the best Caribbean vacations, and 8th on a list of the top 10 best island for a holiday by Places to See in your lifetime. St. Kitts-Nevis was a finalist in the Caribbean Excellence in Sustainable Tourism Awards 2014 and won the award in the category of Destination Stewardship at the Caribbean Tourism Organization State of the Industry Conference in St. Thomas, United States Virgin Islands. We wish to commend the Minister, the Honorable Richard Skerritt, and all in the Ministry of Tourism and all the other stakeholders who together made it possible for St. Kitts-Nevis to win this prestigious award. A successful debt strategy and debt management has seen a reduction in our debt to GDP ratio from 190% to the current level of about 95%, and projections of its trending even lower to about 80% by the end of this year. St. Kitts-Nevis are ahead of the CARICOM average in CXC results in English and mathematics. Our Citizenship by Investment program is the envy of the world. Our New Horizon Center is a model in the OECS for rehabilitation of at-risk youth. I can go on. Making the point, we are punching way above our weight. We even beat the US team in a 4x2 relay race in May this year in the World Relay in the Bahamas. So look out, US, we're coming. How about our recent highly successful hosting of the CPL matches, which was seen by over 200 million viewers all over the world? This is the dawning of a new St. Kitts-Nevis. We must all wake up and get on board. It requires bold initiatives to take us to the next level. Despite our many successes, there are several challenges that must be addressed if we are to keep the edge and sustain and energize growth and human capital development. The global financial meltdown forced us to put greater emphasis on stabilizing the economy, and understandably so. Our people, our workers, we all had to make sacrifices during those turbulent times. The way forward, therefore, at this time, when our economy is rebounding, is to prepare our people to take advantage of expanding opportunities in the new St. Kitts-Nevis, while making greater strides in our social and cultural development. I'll therefore leave you with 4 of the areas that are critical to the sustainable and strengthened economic growth and human development, bearing in mind that our people are our greatest asset. And so I'll focus on human development. Education. Reforms have already begun in education to address the new St. Kitts-Nevis. TVET is designed to produce skilled engineers, mechanics, plumbers, other skilled workers, and is a dire necessity if nationals are to benefit from the increase in construction activities, especially construction of big hotels. Efforts should be made to extend the one-to-one laptop program at least to the grade 6 of the primary school level, while enhancing the use of technology as a teaching and learning tool. And while I'm on technology, let me commend the Ministry of Information Technology, who joined with the Ministry of Community Development to organize sessions in technology for elderly persons and for persons living with disabilities. In the new St. Kitts-Nevis, no one should be left behind. And so we're really happy to extend the use of the technology to the blind, to the deaf, and to those who are differently abled. Our curriculum should include more of our local history and culture, and greater emphasis on soft skills to enhance attitude and behavior of our youth. I must commend the Minister and the Ministry on the REACH program, which has the effect of increasing the number of students who would access tertiary level education. Again, something which we would need going forward. In the area of health, secondly, I want to encourage the involvement of all our people to be part of the movement towards universal health coverage. As we wage a war against non-communicable diseases that account for about 70% of our deaths, we would want to ensure that our people are covered, have proper coverage, so that they can treat with the diseases and the illnesses with which they suffer. Non-communicable diseases are mainly from lifestyle choices. And so all of us have to participate in the reduction or elimination of these diseases. And so I want to encourage all of us to try and eat a healthy diet and to engage in exercise on a regular basis. It sounds rather simple, but it does work. Health costs are unsustainable, both individually and collectively. It was Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, who made the observation that if the issue of health coverage is not addressed, more and more people will be plunged into poverty, and this would negatively affect social and economic development of our countries. The launch of the hospital information system at the Joseph N. Franz General Hospital will bring about a more efficient delivery of health care. We expect to expand the technology to the health centers and other health facilities so that there can be greater efficiency in the delivery of health care throughout the Federation. I want at this point also to commend the Minister of Education, the Honorable Nigel Carty, for working with us in introducing, just August gone here, the Bachelor of Science degree in nursing at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College. I understand that 60 nurses have enrolled in it. This is the program that is being done for the first time, and to say that the government is underwriting the cost of this program. Greater health security and expanded services in areas such as oncology, mental health, and the MRI will help to address some of the major challenges that we now face in health. Thirdly, our cultural industries must be promoted as a means of energizing our economic growth. We have an abundance of talent that must be honed and professionalized so that artists can derive greater financial benefits, thus expanding the job market and contributing to our economic growth. With an expected film industry, we must prepare our talented young singers, dancers, musicians, writers, actors, producers to take full advantage of the opportunities that this industry presents. On Tuesday this week, about 2 days ago, I had quite an interesting conversation with two young men who I described as bold, confident, and talented, two young Kittitian men, Nigel Lewis and James Galloway. They have produced a film already, their first film, which they did out of their pocket. It was on bullying. And they're in the process of producing their second film, this time to promote prevention and early detection of breast cancer. They, as far as I'm aware, and I stand to be corrected, are the first nationals to produce a film. And they should be encouraged and highly commended. What also struck me about these two young men was the fact that even though they had come to ask for assistance, they had done a lot of the groundwork and had some of the financial support that they needed. They were not asking for all, and this is highly commendable. As a new St. Kitts-Nevis is much more diverse, we must embrace cultural diversity if we are to energize growth and human development. We must embrace all who choose to make St. Kitts-Nevis their home and add to our development. And fourthly, I could not leave without mentioning support for gender balance. You'll recognize that of all our presenters up here today, we've seen a little, a little shift in what is the norm. But looking to the future, we have to ensure that there is greater gender balance. And I'm very serious when I say, when you look at all of what is coming out economically, and I'm sure the governor can bear me out on this, you would note that the involvement of women in a greater way would certainly add to our economic growth and human development. I know there's only the women clapping, Need to see some men clapping. You would note that this would certainly encourage better relationships and be better able to provide and make us better able to provide for our families and communities. Legislatively, we have focused on giving fathers the same rights as mothers and ensuring that the best interests of our children are the #1 priority. We must protect our children, and with that in mind, we set out to ensure that there is equality in terms of fathers and mothers via legislation. So, for example, before, what is known as child support came only from the men, even at times when the children resided with them. We have changed that legislatively, and now support can come from the mother or the father. So, I notice the men are clapping very hard. The reality is, however, that about 51% of our households are headed by single mothers. And so greater effort must be made to address the income gap between men and women. Women in construction under the PEP program is a step in the right direction. There are more women in poverty than men, as more women occupy the lower end of the income ladder. We should be reminded that invariably a woman in poverty is a family in poverty. By all accounts and indices, St. Kitts-Nevis is on a path of positive growth. My good friend, the president of the chamber, forgot to mention that Horsford and Tidisi, two of the leading firms in St. Kitts and Nevis, they returned over $8 million in profit. That's what they reported before taxes. And we want to commend them and all the others who did extremely well here in St. Kitts-Nevis, all the other businesses, that is. Our challenge is to sustain it. Today's dialogue gives all of us an opportunity to iron out the kinks, to point out the stumbling blocks, the hindrances that can retard our progress or reverse our gains, and to come up with bold, innovative suggestions and ideas that can enable us to keep the competitive edge as we journey towards the realization of our vision of becoming the first small island sustainable state. We have full confidence that together we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Your presentation drew to our minds that we are at the dawning of a new St. Kitts-Nevis, which demands bold initiatives that would energize growth and human capital development. And critical to human development and growth, you outlined 4 areas: gender balance, cultural industries, education, and health. Drawing on health, I would move most expeditiously to our final presenter, who is, was, and may forever be a physician. And I'm told once you're a doctor, you're always a doctor. And I believe it is because of his diagnostic skills that he was able to look at the economy, and he was able to put the right prescription together of activity and productivity that would help us to be at the position where we are today, that we are boasting of growth, that we are calling this a dawning of a new St. Kitts-Nevis. And this gentleman has been Prime Minister for the last 19 years, with one slight interval has been Minister of Finance there throughout. And so we commend him and we call him to the podium to address us here at the 17th Consultation on the Economy. The Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Dr. Denzel L. Douglas.
I want to thank our Master of Ceremonies, Larry Vaughan. Give him yet again another applause. Permit me, Mr. Chairman, to recognize at the head table and, in fact, in the audience, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Dr. Earl Aston Martin, the Honourable Master Liebert, and my other Cabinet colleagues, the Honourable Sir Dwight Venner, the Governor of our Central Bank, Mr. Damian Hobson, the President of the Chamber, Reverend Rohan of the Methodist community here, and our Financial Secretary, our ambassadors in the audience, members of the Diplomatic and Consular Corps, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I again emphasize that it gives me great pleasure to extend my own warm welcome to all of you present here this morning. Another year has passed in the economic and social life of our beloved Federation, a year that has been marked by many success stories and accomplishments for our people and for our proud, progressive nation. Successes that should be celebrated by all our people, residents and nationals at home and abroad. The entire month of September, in fact, was dedicated to our celebration of 31 years of independence. And we were reminded of our many achievements and the progress we have made as an independent nation. Our achievements are indeed remarkable, especially when measured against the fact that we are the smallest sovereign nation in the Western Hemisphere. Our independence celebration should always serve to remind us of the journey, that long journey that we have traveled, and the course which we have set for ourselves. Similar to our independence celebrations each year, I particularly look forward to this opportunity to dialogue with you, our social and economic partners. And this is a time when we forget all that divides us, and focus on the things that bring us together. A time when collectively we focus on the issues that confront us and exchange ideas that can help us to overcome challenges and progress to the next stage of our development as a people. As we focus our attention on the status of our Federation, we are compelled to consider the theme for this national consultation, and I remind you that it is keeping the edge, energizing growth and human capital development. Looking at the current state of affairs, the St. Kitts-Nevis economy is outperforming several of the Caribbean counterparts and has emerged as a leader in terms of economic growth in the OECS. Our economy has rebounded, and it is set to deliver a second consecutive year of GDP growth in 2014. This is following a notable 3.8% growth in real GDP that was realized back in 2013. All things being equal, we hope to place the negative growth and other negative impacts of the past period of global economic recession firmly behind us. And judging from the performance of the first half of this year. I am very confident that we can improve on last year's performance and continue on a path of growth and development in the foreseeable future. Collectively, we will do so. While we focus on reviving and sustaining the pulse of our economy, my government continues to buttress the pillars of our growth strategy. The expansion in our GDP continues to be powered through growth in the tourism sector, marked by a rebound in stayover and increasing cruise ship visitor arrivals, buoyed by the strong positive impact of the People's Employment Program and a robust performance in the construction sector. Presently, the construction sector continues to be positively impacted by tremendous foreign direct inflows, implementation of private sector projects, including hotel construction and several real estate development projects linked to the Citizenship by Investment Program. Equally important are the public sector construction activities, including housing and major road and drainage works that are taking place at several locations along the length and breadth of St. Kitts. I am happy to report that the manufacturing sector is also catching up with the growth trend. At this time last year, the sector was still suffering from a contraction in growth. However, a rebound is projected for 2014. And up to June of this year, the sector has recorded growth in the region of 7%. 7% as a result of an increase in the production of beverages and electronic components. In 2013, St. Kitts-Nevis was again recorded as a leader among OECS countries in the export of goods and services in the United States to the United States of America. The records show that this trend continues unabated in 2014. And even as we celebrate this noteworthy achievement, I want to challenge you to think outside the box so that we can strategize on ways in which the sector can be strengthened and continuously energized and thereby continue to stand firm as one of the pillars of the dynamic economy we are committed to building here in St. Kitts and Nevis. As the overall economic conditions improve, we have continued to keep a check on prices. For the first half of 2014, the rate of inflation was recorded at 0.4%, reflecting stable prices for most goods and services in the local marketplace. It is also important for us to continue to develop an edge in agriculture in order to achieve an acceptable level of food security and to provide a shelter or buffer to our people from the fluctuations in food prices internationally. Towards this end, my government firmly believes that as we continue to advance our agricultural diversification program and grow that particular sector, our farmers will realize more and better opportunities for linkages with other sectors of the economy. Further, the Ministry of Agriculture will continue in its quest to boost crop production to the point where fresh, locally grown food is available all year round at affordable prices. On the financial side of the economy, the banking system, it remains stable with key liquidity and profitability indicators exceeding the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union regulatory benchmarks. As at the end of June 2014, total residence deposits increased to approximately $4 billion, which is equivalent to about 23% of residence deposits in the overall currency union. In other words, residents in our tiny federation own nearly a quarter of all bank deposits in the entire currency union, which has as its members 6 independent island nations, all of which are much larger than St. Kitts and Nevis in population and land size, and 2 colonies of Great Britain. At the same time, as I ask you to recognize that there's money in the place, credit conditions remain subdued, as in all OECS countries, as credit to the private sector declined and banks appear to take a stance of risk aversion. As the economy improves, it is expected that this trend will soon be reversed, and businesses will again benefit from the strong liquidity situation in our banking system. Indeed, we will use every vehicle available to us to ensure that our people and their enterprises are afforded easier access to credit. Ladies and gentlemen, government's fiscal position is very strong, with positive consolidated overall and primary balances. The Ministry of Finance has confirmed that the performance of the fiscal account was stronger in 2013 than the performances in 2011 and 2012. We are growing from strength to strength. We have comfortably exceeded the targets agreed with the IMF to reach an overall surplus in the region of 12% of GDP and a primary balance of some 15% of GDP. This trend of strong fiscal performance has continued into the first half of 2014, with the achievement of an overall surplus and primary surplus for the central government of above $100 million respectively. You can clap, of course. This is an achievement that we should be proud of, as we have successfully moved from a position of deficit and high fiscal imbalance to surplus on all fiscal accounts. Our strong expenditure containment measures, the continued expansion of revenues through economic recovery, the continued implementation of a comprehensive program of fiscal reform, and the inflows of revenue from our Citizenship by Investment program continue to contribute to the positive fiscal results I have outlined. Going forward, my government intends to maintain that fiscal discipline adopted during the period of adjustment under the standby agreement with the IMF. Indeed, we must celebrate the fact that we have successfully completed 36 months of implementation of our own homegrown adjustment program with the support of the IMF. I stress the point of celebrating this important milestone because the evidence is there to indicate that the policy efforts of my government are yielding dividends, and we have emerged stronger than ever. This strength is demonstrated in so many different ways. For example, in public financial management, in debt management, in economic growth and social progress. Perhaps at the risk of annoying a few among us, I must state for the record that our strength has been soundly demonstrated in the early repayment of some $46.1 million to the IMF, representing about 1/4 of the money borrowed under the program. And this is an extraordinary performance, as it is a rare occurrence for any country anywhere in the world to make payments to the IMF so far ahead of schedule and in such large amounts. You should congratulate yourselves. And so I stress at this time that we have done well for our nation in terms of debt management. Through very skillful negotiations and management, we are working to place the national debt firmly on a downward trajectory. The national debt is now at 95% of GDP, and we have our sights set on reducing it further to around 85% of GDP by the end of this fiscal year 2014. And so, over the next several months, we expect to complete the debt restructuring exercise with the conclusion of the remaining elements of the debt for land swap and the finalization of negotiations with a few remaining creditors. And let me say that at this point, Nevis is on board on this path. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when we consider that it was stated by the opposition that it was the debt restructuring strategy that led to the origin of the motion of no confidence, we continue to wonder if the chamber and its president have their heads buried in the sand. Because, you see, we continue very strongly to say that with the strategies employed by this government, we have achieved marvelous things together. And so I emphasize for all to know that we continue to support the Honorable Speaker of our National Assembly for awaiting the decision of the court on fundamental matters on which he seeks guidance before he can table the motion of no confidence. Hence, I will say to the President and to the Chamber and to all, as Prime Minister and Head of Government, I shall not in any way pressure the Honorable Speaker to table the motion, because the court has to advise him on fundamental matters that he has brought for the court for guidance. In fact, it was only recently that we've heard the opposition boasting publicly that they deliberately took the motion of no confidence matter to the court in order to deliberately delay the tabling of the motion by the Speaker of the National Assembly in order to give them time to put their house in order for the upcoming general elections. The chamber needs to listen all sides. I want to say further that we do not believe that the non-tabling of the motion of no confidence in any way has undermined the economic progress of our country. And if it has, imagine what it would have been, having achieved what we have achieved to date. And so I say again, let us put aside our political differences at this level and work together to move our great country forward. At our national consultation last year, ladies and gentlemen, you gave a very resounding endorsement to the vision for St. Kitts and Nevis to attain the status of a sustainable island state within the underpinnings of a green economy. We are several steps closer to the attaining of this vision, and therefore we should take time to consider some of the key challenges and prospects for us to continue along the path we have chosen. As we deliberate, we should take time out to consider how we are going to reduce the cost of energy, build bigger and better businesses, and more efficient institutions, we must also ask the question as to how we are going to individually and collectively reduce our carbon footprint over time. Today, I wish to submit that it is essential that we work together to capitalize on all the positive elements of our development potential. It is essential that the government, private sector, and civil society work together to determine the right mix of policies and actions necessary for unlocking our true growth potential, as well as the creative energies of our people and institutions. We must together find innovative ways to drive the sustainable development of the business community and accelerate the formation of new ones. Economic growth must bring with it improvements in the living standards of every Kittitian and Nevisian. Economists and other development experts suggest that a number of factors must be at work for growth to be realized in any given economy, large and small, developed or undeveloped. Some of these determinants include innovation, technology, workers' skills, flexibility of markets, rates of savings, capital accumulation, fiscal frameworks, and legal and regulatory frameworks as well. Of course, we have manipulated all of these variables to varying degree in our quest to take the country forward. However, we will also listen to your views in relation to the weight we should give to each of these variables in the upcoming budget and over the medium term. And so as we take stock of the state of the Federation, we should consider the fact that while there are no easy answers for making the choice of a growth and development strategy, our own experience here in our Federation can be very instructive. In order for us to keep the edge as a model of economic and social management, we have to focus on education, particularly skills development and tertiary education. We have to focus on job creation, on entrepreneurship, on technology, on fiscal sustainability, environmental management and protection. We must focus on cheaper energy, food security, public sector, and social safety net reforms. These are essential. The importance of access to cheaper energy for business development and household consumption is critical to the overall performance of the economy. At the last consultation, I congratulated both the SL Horsford and Company and the TDC Group of Companies for being our front runners in putting in place alternative and green energy infrastructure. I believe that the decision to go green would lead to greater profits that would exceed the recently reported margins for 2013 over the short to medium term. My government continues to emphasize that our beloved Federation can only realize its true growth and development potential if the public and private sectors, the local NIA government and civil society forge a meaningful and honest partnership. Such a partnership ought not to be inflicted with insincerity, with deceit, or with sham. Instead, it requires us bringing to the discussion our collective and mutually beneficial strategies that promote economic and social development. And so again, I emphasize that this Labour government will continue to provide the enabling environment for the furtherance of the people of this, our much-loved Federation. Entrepreneurship and small business development is essential to our pledge to keeping the edge in advancing our national development agenda. To all aspiring and potential small business owners, the time is now to make your move towards making your dream a reality. You can tap into the resources offered by the National Entrepreneurship Development Division, NED, at the Ministry of International Trade, Industry and Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and those offered via the various modalities of the SIDF. The SIDF's investment in building entrepreneurship, particularly among young people who otherwise would have found it difficult to obtain seed funding from traditional lending institutions, has been extremely commendable. Significant investments have all been made in infrastructure development in the private sector-based projects that are ongoing. To date, the SIDF has invested over $150 million in 25 projects spread across various sectors in St. Kitts and in Nevis, including but not limited to tourism and resort development, agriculture, education and training, construction and entrepreneurship. And so, ladies and gentlemen, investment in education and training will not only allow St. Kitts and Nevis to keep the edge, but it will allow us to, as they say in athletic terms, lap our competitors. While we continue to invest in physical, economic, and social transformation, we have to ensure that our people are effectively prepared and oriented toward the new economy. Our human resource architecture should provide our people with a competitive advantage in the workplace. There is no doubt that we boast one of the best education systems in the Caribbean, but we are doing enough. But we are also doing enough to make it work for the benefit of developing our nation is a question to be asked. Our early childhood education is second to none, and primary and secondary education systems, they are well established. However, it is imperative that we work toward improving skills development programs to meet the demands of the new economy. Over the years, my administration has worked to expand access to tertiary level education. Many doors are now open for our young people to pursue higher education. The number of students pursuing higher education at the home and abroad with the support of scholarships is unprecedented. With new partnerships forged with the University of the Virgin Islands and with Monroe College, an additional 25 tertiary level scholarships are now available to our people. Opportunities are also available for persons who, for one reason or another, find it difficult to leave their jobs and families to go abroad to study. A new BSc in nursing degree program is now on its way, and a new diploma in education are now available at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College. And also, I should say that almost 40 students were enrolled in this new nursing program and 13 students in the education diploma program just at the start of this new academic year in August 2014. The People's Employment Program, PEP, is also making a very notable contribution in terms of preparing our young people for the world of work. As we endeavor to keep the edge and energize growth and human capital development, my government, it will continue to focus on accessing further educational and training opportunities for our youth in areas that are supportive of the country's overall development strategy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as I announced during the recent independence celebrations, effective the 1st of November 2014, we will see an increase in the minimum wage from EC $320 to now $360 per week. I remind you that when my government took office in July of 1995, and to be frank with you, it seems just like yesterday, the minimum wage was just $3.75 per hour, or $150 per week. We are therefore pleased that we have more than double the minimum wage during our period in office, and we shall continue to keep it under review to ensure that the lower income groups among us do not get left behind as our country continues to move forward. Notwithstanding our inability to get full support in Parliament for the increase in the minimum wage, I know that this initiative is worthwhile and compassionate, and it is a positive step in the right direction. I want once again to publicly thank the Honorable Patrice Nisbet for his leadership in this matter and for his commitment to the vision and philosophy of the government in relation to the protection of workers of our country, St. Kitts and Nevis. I emphasize, almost in closing, that your Labour government will continue to look after the interest of the ordinary man and woman of this country, even though they have been recently described by the opposition as being dumb and ignorant and unsuspecting and being uninformed. Even though they have been so described, we have a mandate to look after their interest, and we shall continue to do so in this Labour administration. St. Kitts and Nevis, it is a leader among countries of the Caribbean in terms of foreign direct investment. At a time when the economic outlook for many small island developing states, including some of our neighbors in the Caribbean region, remains bleak, we continue to realize tremendous investment interest from around the world. Much of this interest has begun to materialize and is already positively impacting the domestic economy. We must be doing something right. Let us continue to do that which is right. And so in order to keep the edge in infrastructure development, we must continue to implement policies, programs, and practices that will build confidence and encourage new investments within and to our shores. We should not ever underestimate the far-reaching impacts that the current and other pipeline investments can have on our development here in our federation. One important opportunity that our business community continues to overlook is the ability to create joint ventures and other partnerships with foreign investors and amongst nationals at home and in the diaspora. And so in considering the issue of partnerships, an important question emerges, and it is this: is there a role for public-private partnership, PPPs, as a means of providing that critical infrastructure that's necessary for the next wave of our development? I understand that some aspects of PPPs will be explored today in our consultation, and so I look forward to that conversation in particular. But whatever the conclusions and the messages taken away from this event, the one simple message I want to share before I close is that we have to take advantage of our unique mix of culture, skills, and knowledge, while at the same time ensuring that we maintain that development edge that we have already attained, and also ensuring balance in our planning for future successes. And just as we engineered our homegrown economic stabilization and adjustment program that has met with overwhelming success, so too I believe that we can work together to craft homegrown solutions to our current challenges. It is worth the effort, for my administration is determined that all I emphasize, not just some of our people, but all of our people must be empowered. My government is proud of the legacy that is being built up with each successive year of our consultation. Your continued involvement in the process to date has helped to influence our policies and programs, even though some may not think so. As a government that listens, so we will continue to consult. We will continue to do so in the collective interest of all of our people. We are a government not of some, not of the minority or the majority. We are the government of all, the Labour government of all. I want to thank you, therefore, in advance. Thank you for your willingness to share your thoughts and your rich experiences in today's forum. May God bless you. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. I want at this time to thank you for setting the focus that we will pursue as we enter the consultation in the next segment. Let me at this time thank the media for bringing this session to the people of the Federation and throughout the world. And at this point, we will go into a break that should be of about 10 minutes, and we resume. So let us refresh ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
This much time.
grab it.